So last month we made a game within a week for a game jam and we won. Actually we ended up in second place, but we needed a clickbait. But anyways, in this video we'll show you how we develop Yo, we're Badlife Games, a team conformed by two dunces that really like video games and wanted to make games their whole lives. And we've made extremely known titles such as Ratabol and Ratabol Z and Super Ratabol Deluxe. And if you don't know what a game jam is, basically is an event where game developers have to make a game within a time limit and a theme that has to be included in the game. Think of the theme kind of as if it were the very base or the core of the game. Game jams are mostly for learning how to make games or to challenge your skills as a game dev, but some of them, like this one, have a ranking system as if they were competitions even though they really aren't. This is actually our 8th jam, so we kinda have a bit of experience that we would like to show you all. So, one of the concepts that changed our way of making games forever is the game design document, which from now on I'll call GDD. A GDD is a document that has every bit of information that a game will have, ranging from the very basics, like the mechanics or levels, to more specific things like game progression and character development. There is not a single way to make a GDD, but there are fundamentals and tips and tricks that will make your GDD go from a bunch of random ideas to an actual readable and organized document. As a quick disclaimer, everything we'll say from now on will be based on more gameplay-focused games like platformers, action games, shooters, but it can also be applied to other kinds of genres. First of all, you have to decide what kind of game you want to make, and it's better if you can write some examples. In our case, we brainstormed ideas very far from each other to cover distinct genres, like an automatic side-scroller kinda like Shy Guy Surfing or Geometry Dash, a fishing game with RPG elements and a fighting game based combat, yeah, that was very weird, Ratabol Extreme, and our final option, a parkour-based platform based off of the Adventure Era, Mario Odyssey and Jet Set Radio. Then we evaluated every option with their benefits and their drawbacks. For example, the fishing game was very ambitious and it would be hard to balance it in time cause we only had like a week to work on the game. We really wanted to make a movement-based platformer and we already had experience, so we ended up choosing that option. Once we had the main idea, the most important aspect of a game is the actual gameplay of it. It doesn't matter if the game has a beautiful art style or a very unique story. If the gameplay is bad, the game will be bad, so that's why we'll start there. The very main core of the gameplay is based off of the main character's mechanics and its interaction with the level design. That's why if you make a character that is fun to use even in a completely empty space, you know you're going the right way. In our case, we knew that we wanted to make a parkour game with a focus on speedrunning, but how hard will it be for players? Well, we like the idea of games that are easy to pick up and play, but harder to master, so we went for that. In order to make the game feel like doing actual parkour, we thought of a dash for air control and as a main attack form, a slide for ground momentum and to pass through small gaps, a wall jump for keeping the slide momentum, a wall jump cause it's cool, a rail grinding system cause it's even cooler, and a... The trick system is a secondary mechanic that makes Avlo do a taunt, and taunting gives him a small speed boost, which is pretty short. Every time you do an ability or kill an enemy, the taunt will reset, so if you keep a flow of ability plus taunt, you will maintain the boost. That, plus learning the level design and the small nuances of Avlo's movement, will grant the players enough speed and momentum to complete the levels twice as fast. Okay, we have the mechanics, but we still need...
Fly like a butterfly.
In order to make a game feel cohesive in its narration and gameplay, we first like to establish both the setting and the story, including its characters. We thought of a medieval-like setting with some modern things inspired of the Y2K era and aesthetic. So, why Y2K? Well, that's because the actual theme of the jam was simpler times, and we approached it with the easy-to-pick-up gameplay, the visual aesthetics, and kinda the setting, trying to make everything as funky and gnarly as we could. As for the visual aesthetics, we went with something based off the Game Boy Color, but with a lot of freedom, both in the total colors of the sprites and the main resolution of the game. With all that decided, I could finally make the character designs. Normally I tend to approach a character design by its story so I can reflect more creative elements on the design, but since we couldn't think of a story yet, I just went and made something that was radical and cool. So I ended up ripping the Black Mage from Final Fantasy and Beat from Jet Set Radio. And I turned it into an imp cause demons are cool as hell, and that's how my beloved son was born, and his name is Avlo, so treat him well. As for the music, we can't really give much advice cause neither of us have a deep musical knowledge. So on this occasion we decided to use Jumpbox, which is a site that lets you do music completely free, to use its chiptune presets and compose both the music and sound effects. Our method to create music starts with the chord progression. We have to make multiple experiments just to find the right progression that matches the feelings we want to transmit to the player. Next, we tweak both the pace and different melodies to create harmonies. Compare the chords we showed you before with this segment of the boss battle theme. Once we have the basic songs of the game, we tend to reuse the melodies for other songs that are related. Here's an example. Now, speaking of level design, that's the second most important thing of a game, cause even if the main character feels fun to control, it needs a place where it can try and challenge both its skills and the interactions that it may have with specific mechanics of a level. As for the levels, we first think of a setting for the level as well. If, for example, you think about a forest, you can make mechanics based off of things you can encounter in forests, like a vine climbing mechanic or a mushroom spring thing mechanic, and so on. So, once again, we brainstormed potential settings with a clear main mechanic, such as a basic medieval city with a water theme and springs made up of water, an abandoned tower with a heavy vertical focus, the insides of a giant monster, kind of like Bowser's Inside Story, and a graveyard with a moon phase mechanic. At the end, we actually kept two of those ideas and rethought one of them, which ended up being the final levels of the game. Finally, the only things left for us to think about were the enemies, obstacles, and boss fights. For the enemies, we wanted to keep it simple cause the focus of the game isn't to battle the enemies, but rather using them to your advantage, so we thought that every Avlo's attack had to make him bounce every time he hit an enemy. As for that, the enemies have to be really simple to not make the platforming complicated, so we kinda just did some really basic enemies. Most of them are just stuck in place and others just chase you around. The bosses were a tough decision cause the game isn't focused on battling, but at that time we really didn't have any other idea, so we just kinda balled with it. But as for the bosses, the best way to design them is to keep in mind that the players won't know its pattern the first time they fight them, so you gotta make their attacks really obvious to recognize so it doesn't end up being frustrating. And you better remember this cause I'll bring it back later. And with all that work, we could finally do... The first thing we did was setting up the basic systems of the game, like the manager object and the camera. Think of the manager as an omniscient being that knows everything and pulls all of the strings behind the shadows, like showing up the HUD, restarting the level after losing all of your HP, creating the transition between levels, and so on. The secret sauce to make really nice platforming mechanics is flow and control. And what do I mean by this? Well, it's simply that if you want the character to move, make him move instantly, not with friction and acceleration, cause it makes the character harder to control. If your game has simulated physics, that's okay too, just have in mind that it can make the character feel too slippery or slow to start up. So you gotta test the hell out of the game till you find the sweet spot. And that applies to jumps too. You don't want your jump to go all out, but rather to let the player manually control the height he needs by the duration of the input press. This will give them more control of their jumps and have more precision overall. Then we added the last things left of Ablo's moveset, that being the dash, slide, vault jump, wall jump, rail grinding, and the taunts. Okay, but what about the flow? Well, it is to connect the dots. Instead of just limiting the mechanics, if you find a bug that actually adds up to the gameplay, you can work around to make it an unintended intentional feature. In our case, we applied that by letting you go from sliding to rail grinding and dashing to wall jumping, and that just adds so much to the overall flow of the game. And with all of that done, and some other necessary things like the attack system and the life system, base Ablo was done. That doesn't mean that it was fast or super easy. Obviously we encountered a lot of bugs and actual unintentional features that we had to fix. And sometimes we are surpassed by our own limits. The thing is that we wanted to add slopes and diagonal rails, but if you know a thing or two about coding, you know the absolute hell that is coding slopes. We're not professional coders, we luckily know how to make buttons go beep boop, so we had to cut the slope and multidirectional rails as a feature. The good thing is that as it was only the beginning of the actual development, we didn't have to change level design or any of that, so it was only a small stumble. And with the basics done, Gio could finally start making levels and me the actual art of the game, so we could finally start with... This was actually the most difficult part of the overall development as it required a lot of time to actually finish all the work in time. First things first, the tutorial. This is one of the most vital parts of any game because it teaches the basics and whether the player learns how to play or not. Tutorials are not an easy task due to their nature. No one wants to have a lot of text telling them what to do because not only they won't remember it, but they just want to go straight to the action. And that's not a bad thing, you just gotta know how to keep things as interesting and as less distracting as possible. One of the best ways to do it is by breadcrumbing, which is the way that the most advanced level designers approach tutorials. And once you understand it, you will find it in a lot of games, ranging from Mario to Half-Life 2. In the case of Mario, for example, the game doesn't explain to you how to jump nor what the question blocks do. Instead, they just drop you with mean-looking enemies going straight to your direction, making you search for the answer for yourself and, with so, learning how to jump. And as for the question blocks, they are colorful and shiny and make you wonder why they are so different from the other blocks. As your curiosity rises, you interact with it in any way possible to learn what that block does. And once you get to discover it on your own, you get a reward. Applying it to Ablo, we use the breadcrumbing in many ways, like in the first dash section by rewarding the player with gnarlies and an obstacle list, same with the part that teaches how to do the downwards dash. Now, speaking of the levels themselves, each level was made to fit between two elements of the game, the natural movement of Ablo and the own mechanics of the levels. Ablo's main movement needs sections that lead the player through basic obstacles, but taking advantage of its interactions, like the wall jumping sections or the gaps that need to be passed through with the slide, and so on. The level mechanics themselves were thought to be used only on their own levels, and all of them with the objective of changing in some sort of way Ablo's movement. That being the water springs, the wind streams, and the teleportation coffins that forces the player to react much faster to sudden changes in the level. In all of them, we wanted to be consistent with the idea of first introducing the mechanic in the comfiest way possible, then start to ramp things up and finally twist it to challenge the player even more. It's the main level design method that many platformers use, the so-called Kisho Tenketsu. As for the art, I am a character specialized artist, meaning that environment is actually my weak spot, making it 10 times more difficult for me to do something more visually appealing and unique than the characters themselves. So I ended up with a simple method to make my backgrounds pop out the most. When making backgrounds, I start by looking at as many references as I can, this time being Camelot Castle from Sonic and the Black Knight, old German houses, real-life locations, Kirby for the waterfalls and cause it's based, and so on. Then I make the initial sketch by placing only shapes, forms and colors to guide the player's eyes in the way I want. From then onwards, I simply start to polish it and import it to the game every once in a while to compare its colors to the players, enemies and tiles colors, and see how much of the background can actually interfere with the overall visual readability of the level, and if it does, I simply erase some layers or change the colors. And at last, when the background is finally done, it still looks kinda weird in game cause it needs the final detail that makes it believable, the parallax. It's a simple effect where the farther the things are, the slower they move, and that's why it's so important to separate it in layers and to make them tileable, so with boom and bam, it's done. And with all that heavy work done, that being the tutorial, the whole 3 levels with different routes each, different playstyles, 3 whole backgrounds, tiles, enemies, and Avlo's animation, we enter. As for the final days of the game, we ended up having only 2 levels, but we decided to not sleep a single bit and try hard the hell out of the jam and ended up making a 3rd level. We actually made the final level as the second one, cause if we didn't have the second level in time, at least we had a final level that was cohesive with the story and the progression of the game. With no sleep at all, gallons of coffee and tons of ice block chewed, we managed to complete the whole game in time, and we even had some time left to add some VFX and a time record system for the levels. And it's done. The game was finally done after 7 days where we worked on it like at least 16 hours a day, so we took a deep breath and uploaded it. The next couple of days we played and rated some games of the jam, and so did the other participants with our game, and the results were actually pretty good overall. People did like the game, although it's not perfect. Remember when I said that the bosses needed to be readable? Well, that's where ironically we failed. As the boss was one of the final things we added in the game, it did not have any playtest aside from us at all, so it ended up being kinda frustrating for not having a really clear pattern. So even though we knew all that stuff, we failed. What we wanna say with this is don't worry if you fail, cause we all do. What really matters is that you tried, and that's where the real value resides, so never give up. Speaking of the results themselves, they were pretty good. We ended up in 2nd place overall and we won 3 categories, making Avlo the most category winner in the jam.
That's my kid! I love him! I'm proud of him!
First of all, we are deeply grateful to all of the people that played and rated our game, cause what we really wanna do is to create significant experiences for people in the form of games. So for giving us that valuable feedback that makes us grow as developers, for the kind words and for giving our game a chance, we deeply want to thank you all. Also, special shout out to Brainless for making the jam and playing all of the games, which were a whole lot. And as for a quick reflection of what we learned as the developers of Avlo, is that after all these years of doubting ourselves with the quality and enjoyment of our games, we are actually capable of making experiences that mean something to people. Actually, as a quick fact, this was our most asked game to do a full version of. That's why the big announcement is... For now, there's nothing to show as we actually were really busy participating in an event in Mexico, cabrones! So you'll have to wait a bit to see what we have in store. And with all that, thank you for watching till the end, and if you found this video helpful or entertaining, we invite you to smash that like and follow us. And as for a quick question to you guys, what did you think of the video? What would you like to see next? Are some parts of the video over-explained and some others aren't? As this is our first time making videos, feedback will be really helpful. Well, that's all for our part. See ya!